How are you doing, Miriam?
Hey Lisa, how are you?
I'm well. It's good to
Sorry,
see you.
sorry, there is a list. I didn't see you.
That's okay. I'm
Yeah,
hiding. I'm hiding up here in the corner.
yes, it's good to see you too.
Yeah, you as well.
Thank you. Thank you
Hey,
for
Alan.
participating.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Yes.
Let's
So,
see, do we have everybody here? So I'm passing through. Uh, Find Adam. Let's see.
Alan, did you guys think to invite Stacy Brown with the Convention and Tourist Bureau?
I don't think we did.
She would be a good one to involve in this conversation as it goes forward.
I understand. I agree. You need to go no further with explanation. You're absolutely right. It's it's just one of those things. There's Adam. Let me just thank you all for getting involved and participating in this effort. We're at a very ground uh, roots effort in addressing transient vacation rentals or short-term rentals. We got involved because transient vacation rentals are becoming very popular in Shreveport and around the country. And the thing about a use that becomes extremely popular is that those type uses, sometimes if we don't monitor them, they can cause problems and turn into uses that are very undesirable. We are not trying to, and I just want to share this with this group, we're not trying to reach out and come up with some very harsh and difficult regulations to implement in order to monitor transit vacation rentals. But we feel like, and the city council feels like, that there should be some rules in place. You all can be extremely helpful in the process of the development of the ordinance, since you have some knowledge and you have some understanding and possibly some involvement with these transient vacation rentals. So I just wanted to clear the air, because whenever the MPC starts to develop information and develop ordinances about uses, the first thing that goes out are the rumors that the MPC is starting to try to shut down all of the transit vacation rentals in the city. And the MPC is much involved in ensuring that anything that helps the city of Shreveport, helps as Liz has talked, the tourist attractions of making Shreveport a destination. Any of those things that happen, we are very interested in making sure that we are not an obstruction to those type things. It's going to be a learning process for us. They'll give you a timeline for exactly how things will unfold. But I just wanted to just welcome you on to this ride that we're about to have, and thank you for your participation. And we're not in a real hurry to get an ordinance in place. I would not like to take forever, but we're not in a real hurry. We want to take it a slow, deliberate approach, because we want to get it right, and we want to make sure it's fair, equitable, and works for the citizens of City of Shreveport and Caddo Parish. With that said, I'm going to bow out gracefully. Good seeing you, Liz. I don't know you, Wendy, if I could call you Wendy, but it is good to meet you. I don't know who Sarah Jane is, but it is good to meet you also, and thank you so much for coming today. Go right ahead, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I think next on the agenda, sorry that I was a little late. So I just real quick, can we just do some introductions? My name's Adam Bailey. I'm with the obviously the MPC. I'm the Community Planning and Design Manager. It's the Community Planning Division of the MPC that's going to overlook this research project moving forward. And I'll just pass it on to the next person on the list who wants to introduce themselves.
Well, I'll go next. I'm Liz Swain. I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Development Authority, the Downtown Shreveport Development Corporation. We have a couple of Airbnbs in our downtown now and are expecting more. They have become very popular. People enjoy utilizing them. They enjoy coming to town and, you know, getting to experience different types of stays while they're here. And so we're very interested in Airbnb running well for downtown and for the city and parish.
I'm Wendy Benscotter. I'm the Executive Director of Shreveport Common. We deal mostly in the redevelopment of Shreveport Common. It's the area around the Municipal Auditorium and Old Central Fire Station. And we also have property owners and developers who are interested in Airbnb because we want to see and are pushing for Shreveport Common to become a real vibrant, walkable cultural center. And with that, you're going to want something like Airbnbs, especially unique ones, to be in the area.
Hi, my name is Sarah Scott. I'm the Sarah Jane, and I live in historic Highland. I have been leasing a fully furnished studio from Craigslist for the last 15 years with great success with the medical school connection. And I am most interested in what happens with Airbnb and VRB, whatever you call them all, because we want to convert some apartments that we have had trouble renting for the last 3 or 4 years, really. And so I want to be on the ground floor. One of the things that I'm particularly interested in hearing is that in our historic districts where Airbnbs are very popular, I want to make sure that we have owners that live in this city or in the neighborhood, because that is where New Orleans dropped off the cliff almost. They had to recoup, go backwards. We go to New Orleans in the French Quarter a lot. They had a lot of people doing it. People from out of town were buying properties. And so that's what's happening here in our neighborhood. We have people from not in this state buying houses and flip them for the purpose of Airbnb. So that's why I'm here today. I want to see what happens with that because we live in this community and it's important to us for it to remain intact.
Is that everybody? Looks that way. Well, I'm going to give a very quick presentation, and based on that presentation, then we're going to hopefully kick off some discussion. Let me share the screen.
Hey, Adam.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the mute button to unmute. My name's Jake Brown. I'm James Brown on the screen. I own a couple Airbnbs, and then my wife and me also manage multiple other Airbnbs that are throughout the city of Shreveport. We have one friend that inherited a house from Jimmy Davis, his heirs, and it's over Offline Avenue, and he actually rehabbed the house, fixed it all up. It was in disrepair. He fixed it up and he's wanting to use it to do Airbnb rental, but also to have it to where him and his family can come when it's not rented. And we've been doing Airbnbs for, I don't know, over about 6 years now. And I mean, we send everybody to the businesses in Shreveport, all of our favorite restaurants, our favorite bars. We send them to the aquarium. We send them to Gator and Friends. I mean, we've had probably over 600 reviews on one of our rentals. And a lot of these people would have never come to Shreveport if they weren't able to stay in an Airbnb. So that's kind of why I'm here today, is I just want to make sure that, I understand that maybe there needs to be some type of regulation to make sure that people aren't flipping them. But I see a big positive thing for Shreveport actually having Airbnbs.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I'll go through the presentation very quickly, and then we'll open it up. The purpose of what we're researching for is, I think everyone can allude to, that there are existing regulations, but they're very outdated. If you look in the Shreveport UDC under use standards, there are 3. And with the final ones saying that, what specifically does it say? That all transient vacation rentals must be licensed by the Director of Finance. But if you were to go to the Director of Finance right now and try to get some sort of application or form, it doesn't exist. When the UDC came into effect in 2017 and transient vacation rentals were a part of that, they were listed as a special use permit. Currently, right now, through the passing of City Council amendments, through Cotex amendments, they're now a special exception use. But in the 4 years going on that the UDC has been in place, no one has applied for a special use permit. No one currently is on the books for getting a special exception use. So we need to possibly look at closing in those holes that are in the ordinance. So in creating something new, we want to create equitable regulations for the Airbnb industry that makes sense to citizens, businesses, people who do it, stakeholders, whatnot, all while minimizing the impact to the residential areas by protecting that neighborhood character and to enable economic opportunities for both the city and within that transient vacation rental. So the scope that we're looking at, the types of Airbnbs, all the way from single room rentals, small residential, up to large residential. A map on the right kind of shows places where we have found evidence, whether it be through Craigslist, whether it be through Airbnb, through VRBO, where people currently in Shreveport have Airbnbs. So what are some of the regulations that we can look at? That doesn't mean add on extensive regulations, but all the way from updating the use standards, updating places where they can or possibly cannot be, filling in those gaps with licensing and the application process, looking at how to do renewals. Currently, home-based businesses have to do a renewal every 2 years. Do we need some type of renewal for Airbnbs, or is it just a one and done? Once you get approved, you're good throughout until you no longer have it. Are there going to be fees? What about taxes? And what about enforcement and violations? The timeline, Mr. Clark said we weren't really on a timeline, but we set one up for our scope. But that doesn't mean that it's set in stone. Looking at where we are today, back you up a little bit, this directive came for research by City Council in December. MPC staff, specifically the Community Planning Division, put together a scope, reached out to you all, and our first public forum is today. After today, we're going to look at possibly getting a first draft of some use standards throughout the month. As soon as we have that in place, we're going to do a press release, have another public forum. After that second public forum, if needed, we'll draft another round of use standards. We'll get some public review from that. Hopefully, based on the 2 public forums and all the drafts, we'll formulate a final draft that right now, tentatively, we're looking at April for MPC review and recommendation, which would take us into May for City Council final decision. So what's next? Like I said, we're going to try to get a first draft between now and March 10th, release it to the public, and then have that second public forum on Wednesday, March 10th. And now I'm going to open it up for possible discussion, both from Mr. Clark, MPC members, as well as Wendy, Jake, or Liz, and Sarah, sorry.
This is Sarah again. I actually spoke with Ben Mueller yesterday, and he is supposed to be emailing me the special exception permit so that I can fill this out. And he made me aware of all the new changes. He made me aware of the fees. And I guess as soon as I get that, I'm going to get on board and get this thing moving so we can be, meeting the current regulations. I did a personal search on the MPC's website. You have a search bar. I put in the term Airbnb. I put in vacation rentals. I put in every term I could think of that would help me find a form, and it's not in there. So that's why I had to do a lot of digging to find out how to even start this process. So I want to commend the MPC for getting this started, because as you said, there are tons of Airbnbs here. And also you're missing out on the opportunity for the $350 that it costs to become, within the regulations. But I guess my question at this point is, if I pursue this new special exception permit and get these properties in line, will I have to meet a new type of review once all of this is settled? Will I have to do this again, say in May, when the city council decides?
To answer your question, no, but I will need to get with Mr. Clark and Ben asking why we would start to even accept a special exception use application. And the reason why I'm saying that is, while we can go through and you could get approved under the current regulation, the big thing that's the gap is that there is no way until revenue gets on board for any of this.
Oh, I see.
Yes, the MPC could take the $350. Yes, we could take it in front of the ZBA, but then there's no way for the final piece of that through revenue. I don't know if Mr. Clark is still on here on, that's going to be his final say, but I was under the, I don't want to say assumption, but the understanding that until this new process was going to be in place, that currently there are no special uses out there for Airbnbs, then we were gonna just continue to, I don't want to say not enforce it, but put a hold on it until the proper regulations, the proper use standards, and that process and all the holes have been filled.
That makes sense to me. And I think, having heard that, I think it makes sense to wait until all things are approved and everybody's had their part voted on or held up. So I'm glad I asked that question. Thank you.
Adam, I have a question, please.
Yes,
For
ma'am.
some of the people who have Airbnbs, Sarah and James, and if Logan Mansion is here, Lisa, anybody else, Madison, I don't know if you have any, but you certainly know what's going on in Highland. One of the problems that has been endemic down in New Orleans, obviously, is this is changing the face of neighborhoods in a way that is not, it's not a good way for the neighborhoods. People are coming in, spending a lot of money on homes. They are preventing locals from purchasing those homes, having a home to live in, they're flipping. And so it's creating significant issues for them. I don't feel like we are having that issue, but I'm wondering what you guys are seeing in Highland. I know that my brother recently purchased a little house next to Centenary, and the house next to him is an Airbnb. It's owned by a local man who owns many, many Airbnbs, apparently. And at least once a month, there'll be a huge party there. And even though the documents say no parties are allowed and this is illegal and you can't do this, at 2 o'clock in the morning, my brother's having to call the police and get them to shut the parties down. I'm wondering, are you guys hearing any blowback in Highland about Airbnb or it creating a problem for, people being able to afford homes there?
At the MPC level, I would say no. When this discussion started back in December and on into January, I know Mr. Clark kept referring to some issues with potential Airbnbs or VRBOs. I think many of those were in Cross Lake, but we haven't received specific, hey, this Airbnb is doing this. Now, I do know how, through our research, other municipalities address that. But then again, we're not other municipalities. You know, we talk extensively with New Orleans, understanding all the way how their fees are broken down to their enforcement, to that they have almost a direct line with Airbnb that they can have one of the hosts and the ad shut down, and, you know, due to violations. But I know those are things that we want to look at. And it's good to know that there is currently some potential concerns about such uses in Highland and maybe elsewhere.
Madison, have you heard anything? Sarah, James, anybody?
Liz, thanks for asking that. So I have to say that there was kind of a online discussion going about this topic. Of course, my phone rings exactly this time. And I was surprised to really see almost no complaints. Liz, really, your brother's story is the first one that I've heard with an Airbnb issue. And more neighbors seem to be saying, you know, if we don't have a problem, you know, do we really need to be fixing that? You know, New Orleans's problems, as you're saying, aren't really quite our problems. And kind of the other way around, like the opposite problem of New Orleans, which is if this is an opportunity for people to come in and invest in homes and, you know, make some money, that would really be a good thing for our neighborhood. I think as long as, you know, it's within reason, right? To Sarah's idea of making sure that the owner is at least local in some way and able to keep an eye on the property seems quite reasonable. And having laws that make sense and are equitable across the board are also reasonable. But I haven't heard a need to kind of get ahead of a problem yet from my perspective.
And hey, this is Jake here. I managed one that was over on Greenway for one of my buddies he was a landman in the oil and gas business, and he was away from home, so he wanted to Airbnb his house. Well, his house it was in disrepair, and the neighbors hated that it wasn't painted. He didn't want to put any money into it because he'd worked away from home for about 7 years. So he wasn't cutting the grass. Well, we took over, and since it was rented, we talked to all the neighbors. We gave them our number. We're friends now with the neighbors, and we would tell them if there's any shenanigans going on, you call us immediately. And they would. And I mean, one time we had people that had some extra people over, which we don't allow extra guests. You know, the people staying in the house is all we would allow. And he called us and said, hey, there's about 15 people here and they're getting kind of loud. I came over and I kicked them all out. So, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, I could see that, you know, if this is a reoccurring problem, then yeah, that person needs to be dealt with. But I don't see us, you know, people that are actually trying to do the right thing, and it's actually bringing business back to Shreveport and having some of these older houses get fixed up. I don't really see it being a bad thing. And the other thing that I'm kind of concerned about is that everybody's going to have to get this special use permit through the Zoning Board of Appeals. Because it just seems like if you're already at the appeal level, if it gets knocked down, then pretty much you've got to take them to court over it. Like you don't, like when you go to the MPC, at least you can appeal it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. But people that have spent money and are trying to make Shreveport better and actually have these Airbnbs, Shreveport hasn't regulated it, you know, so the UDC allowed it way back in the day. I mean, they did have rules, but Shreveport never did anything with that. How can we hold people accountable that have invested money and tried to do something to bring business back to Shreveport, how can we hold them accountable? I mean, what happens if they get denied and they've been doing it for 5 years?
So Jake, bringing up the point of the special exception and the ZBA and the special use that used to be through the MPC is a great point. That's just where it currently sits right now. That doesn't mean moving forward, that's through all this discussion, through all the, potential venues that we're going to go through on our research, is it going to stay there? It might make sense to just have it administratively approved. It might make sense to have it go back as a special use permit or keep it in front of the ZBA. I don't know, but bringing up the concern that if all these, I think last count, there's about 150 of them in Shreveport, but that give or take 10 or 12, depending on the weekend that you go want to look at how many there are in Shreveport, would all of those be grandfathered? Would we expect every single one to, come get some new approval? Those are questions that we're looking to answer and hopefully iron out over the next couple of months.
And Adam, did you say there was going to be a cost associated with getting that permit?
Well, currently right now, if there would be, but that's up for
It's negotiable
debate.
or
Right.
debate, up for debate.
Well, I mean, usually.
Adam, have y'all looked into how much y'all have made off of Airbnb Shreveport? Because I mean, I know Airbnb, VRBO doesn't, but we don't use that platform. We really like Airbnb, but Airbnb takes out the taxes, so like, have y'all been able to look at how much money Shreveport's already making off these Airbnb rentals?
Well, I can tell you right now, it's zero, because there's no process through finance to actually record it. I mean, if you go to the city revenue right now and were to ask them, hey, break down, give me a tally of Airbnbs in 2019, 2018, they couldn't tell it to you because there's no way to do that through revenue. And because it hasn't been done through revenue, it hasn't been done through the MPC either. So if you actually look at what Shreveport has missed out on, that is something that to be discussed.
Well, everybody should be paying their taxes on it. And I mean, I know that like Airbnb holds out a good chunk of change for people that rent that goes to the taxes directly from Airbnb. So that's why, I mean, the ones I specifically own are in Caddo Parish, but the people that I manage other ones for, I mean, I was under the assumption that on their taxes that they were paying whatever city and state tax they were supposed to.
Now that could be, pulled out at a state level, but if the city through its occupational license isn't connected the dots on that, then there's no way the city can to pull that. At least that is how I view it. Somebody out there can kind of direct me if I'm right or wrong.
I know that New Orleans, had a big issue with Airbnbs, and I know that, that's why this was a settlement that they came to with Airbnb, and that's why Airbnb withholds the state's portion of the tax. Now, I don't know if they withhold the city's portion, but I mean, if you talk to Airbnb, I think there's a possibility that they would withhold that also for y'all. I know they do it for other cities.
Yeah, I think to add that, it seems like if we could keep the barrier to entry low so that if there is a big event in Shreveport or someone wants to try this out, they would have the opportunity, but maybe build it into, a rental fee structure over time so that the city is still able to, make the same money that would be expected out of a regular B&B or a small business operating in someone's home, but not have, sometimes it can be hard to, lay out $300, $500 if you don't really know it's going to be a good deal.
The research I've done, this is Sarah, on Airbnb, they will collect any taxes that the host wants them to. That's the way I read it. And they have several places you can go in about taxes, occupancy taxes. And so I think that once the city comes to grips with whatever it is that they want to realize from this, then, I think the host could reach out to Airbnb and see how to work that into their bookings. So, that's so far down the line right now. I know they collect taxes for federal tax information and most likely state too. But the occupancy taxes and things like that, you can't find anything. Like I said, there's nothing that the city has currently listed that would guide a host to let Airbnb know that they need additional taxes held from the bookings.
Correct. And that was one of the things that I think I mentioned, that the whole is, and I think we found this out in January when we started our research, if you were to call revenue right now and the director of finance and say, hey, what are y'all doing about Airbnbs, VRBOs, transient vacation rentals? You can throw out all types of terms. And they're like, there's nothing. There's nothing about it. And so we're like, okay, well, as part of this, we need to connect the dots. I'm not saying that Shreveport is New Orleans and that we're losing out on, or they are losing out on a huge revenue stream, because I don't necessarily think that's the case. But that there is no avenue right now to get anything on the books.
So your $350 special use permit was the only realization of, return to the city as it stands now, and that may be replaced with something different as all of this is settled.
Well, correct. So, with any other special use permit or even moving forward, because it's not just transient vacation rentals that would be a special exception use. It's also manufactured homes, and I think beauty shops and beauty parlors and whatnot would require special exception use. But those fees were just normal application and administrative fees that the MPC would, take in order to do our due diligence, in order to, provide legal, write up the staff report, staff time, inspection time, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously those fees, are all incurred, through the city. So that is where it's at currently. I know back, and I know food trucks are not the same as Airbnb, but when we noticed the gaps in the food truck process and revenue had a stake in it and the MPC had a stake in it, we came up with a compromise saying, hey, there's going to be one flat fee. And then within that flat fee, then it's divided, because revenue does their own thing and then the MPC does its own thing. But when we were pushing for a one-stop shop for food trucks, will something be similar to that? Possibly. I think it's too early to define that right now.
So at present, the hotel motel occupancy tax is not being levied on Airbnbs because the owners of Airbnbs don't know to ask Airbnb to withhold that money. Is that fair?
Well, but even, I mean, how I understand it is that if it was all done through revenue, through an occupational license, and then, that through your occupational license, then the city or the parish, depending, knows the income that's coming in and then how stuff is levied out. And so until that happens, I would I can only suspect that nothing is being calculated or dispensed.
Lisa, are you on this Zoom call? Lisa with Logan Mansion? I was thinking that she had told me that they were collecting hotel motel occupancy tax, but that may be a specific.
Liz, she's not here, but
Okay.
she said her son will be here. I saw
Okay.
her son.
I will look it up right now.
And this may not be anything that we want to get involved in, but a couple of the other issues that I've heard, again, I go back to New Orleans just because New Orleans has had experience with this. They've been dealing with it for a number of years. It's been very public and, you know, quite a fight down there. Interestingly, I saw a CSI the other night that was all about Airbnbs and how people who come into Vegas who don't know anything about the city may be renting an Airbnb in a very, very high crime part of town. Could be a very, you know, sketchy, scary place for them. Is there, are we concerned about safety or, and I don't know that there's any way to deal with that at all. I'm assuming that with VRBO, Verbo and with Airbnb, it's just all in your reviews. If you continue to get bad reviews, people just won't stay there.
The conversations that I was involved with New Orleans, and Miriam might want to chime in on this as well because she was on the call. Yes, this has been a very upfront issue with New Orleans. And because of that, and then I asked how many Airbnbs that they had, and she couldn't give me an exact number because it's always changing. And then there's some that are illegally, you know, operating. But she said it's between, I think, 8,500 and 10,000. And that, you know, there are people who own hundreds of Airbnbs in New Orleans. And it just caught me off guard that someone, you know, could have plural, you know, hundreds, not just 100, but hundreds. And when it came to, because they had so many within their planning division, their enforcement was 100%. That's all they did. You know, it wasn't that like our enforcement is okay, that they do signs, they do complaints, they do a multitude of things. They just had inspectors who would go out and inspect Airbnbs. But I think the intent is that you put the right use standards on there, and that within that you address the safety issue, and then it's something that can be inspected.
Hi, it's Lisa. I just joined. My apologies.
Lisa, do you pay hotel motel occupancy tax? I was thinking you told me that you did.
I actually do. And if there isn't any type of accounting for it, I can actually go back and pull up the total amount that Airbnb pulls directly out of our bookings. And I can provide, I'm happy to provide that information if y'all need it for reconciliation. And anybody else on Airbnb can do the exact same thing. We are charged a guest service fee. We're charged occupancy tax, and we're also charged a host service fee. Now, there is something called a voluntary contract agreement, and that is something that a lot of different cities have requested Airbnb as well as the other platforms to actually put in place. And what that means is it's an agreement for those platforms, including Airbnb, to actually go in and do the collection and remit those taxes to, you know, all these different cities. I probably spent about 3 hours researching all this last week in preparation for this meeting. So you just enter into an agreement with Airbnb. It sounds like you've got dialogue going on right now. And I would highly encourage, putting that in place. I think that'll solve a lot of problems here.
But Lisa, quick question: does the taxes that Airbnb is taking out, you're not having to pay any of those to the city? That's all what Airbnb is taking.
That is something that Airbnb takes out. So we are not directly paying that to the city. It's our understanding, and based on what Airbnb has posted, that they are paying that directly. And that's why, I'm happy to go back and pull up the actual amount. So if y'all are not getting it, I can tell you how much you should have been getting at least from us.
Right, thanks.
My pleasure.
Hey, Jake, are y'all under the same category? And that Airbnb takes out taxes that I guess you were assuming or thinking that the city or parish got?
Well, I mean, my understanding is that they just take out the state taxes because the jurisdiction that wants Airbnb to take it out, that would be like Shreveport or Caddo Parish, that y'all have to ask Airbnb. And if you look at what Madison sent out, it gives the parishes that they will collect occupancy tax. It shows that. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think going through this process, y'all need to just talk with Airbnb also to see what needs to be done so that the city's taxes will be taken out.
Right. Thanks.
And I mean, this won't solve VRBO and, Craigslist, but this will solve Airbnb. So, I mean, they'll at least take out the taxes. I pay my taxes with my accountant, and I was under the impression all the people we do for also do the same thing. They pay whatever extra taxes they're supposed to pay. They do that on their, when they do their taxes every year.
Right.
And it looks like you guys probably already know this if you've been talking to New Orleans, but that they do both the local tax, the state tax, and then a 50 cents per night additional fee to cover short-term rentals. I think probably that office, right? So I love the idea of building in something like this that would scale rather than having something on the front end if it was possible.
Good point.
And just for Liz's earlier question about safety and security, which I think is a good one. I know that Airbnb has an automatic option to cancel without fees. So if you get to an Airbnb in a new city and you realize you don't feel as comfortable as you thought it was going to be, you can walk out without, paying for that night. Nothing goes on your credit card until afterwards. And then, Liz, it is, I think for all of these online systems, it's all about reviews. Any hotel that I would go to, I'd review in the same way. And, I'll say in Highland, I'm not really as worried about people who have a credit card on file, right? Our bigger concerns are kind of elsewhere when it comes to community safety issues. I hoped that one day becomes my priority concern.
So this is Sarah, and I'm getting ready to log off. I have some work I need to go do, but I guess what I am hearing, and I would like confirmation that for now, we are to continue business as usual for those of us who are currently leasing short-term rental, vacation, Airbnb, and we're not to worry about applying for any special exception use at this time. Rather, we're going to be part of this solution as it plays out through the many places it needs to go. And I would like to stay on some type of list so that when these things occur, we can also be back on these meetings, whether it's physical or virtual. I want to congratulate the MPC again for even starting this process. I know that everyone who does this throughout our city, and I know that everyone in Highland that does it wants to be legitimate and wants to be part of the city's good thing. So I would like confirmation that for now, we are to continue business as usual.
Yes, ma'am. The whole reason that this, kind of got brought up to the top, as I said earlier, was during the process of moving this over from a special use permit to a special exception use, was we started to see the holes in it. So that paralleled with city council saying, hey, well, why don't y'all really look at it? So we're putting everything on hold. No need to go get out a $350 fee for a special exception use. Let us do our due diligence. Let us, continue to get feedback from you. Anybody else you want to send this information to, we're more than welcome to talk to about between now and I think the next public forum, which yes, March 10th, we'll hopefully have some type of preliminary draft ready for review. We'll send it to everyone on this list, as well as the neighborhood associations and anyone else that we can think of. We'll do a press release for it. Hopefully that will dictate more conversation, more comments, more debate. And then from there, continue on that in April or May, something will be on the books.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bailey.
Yes, ma'am. I know Sarah was logging off. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to add? I think we slotted an hour for this meeting. We got about 2 more minutes to anything that you feel we should look at, not look at, concerns, guidance. The floor is open.
Quick question, Adam, are transient rentals allowed in all parts of the UDC and all of the different zoning types?
Usually the way it is in Shreveport, they're allowed in all of any residential district. They're allowed in the CUC, which is the commercial urban core, which obviously allows mixed use, and it's allowed in all downtown subdistricts. That's where it currently is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I mean, and that can be expanded, that can be, further, tightened up. We've seen a plethora of different cities that allow them in different places for different reasons. And then, even with New Orleans, they restrict them in places. So that's just, I think, where we started from. Will we continue? I say yes, but again, always open to discussing it.
So Adam, in the D1E downtown, it's a special use permit. It's not a.
Well, the way it was up until last month, it was a special permit, and anywhere it called for a special use permit, whether it be in a RA, R112, R15, mobile home subdivision, CUC, or even the downtown districts. And then we just moved all those to E's. In that process, after it went through, I think the MPC level, then we started getting some, not necessarily objections, but some people at the city level were like, hey, what is this? Why are you changing this? And they wanted to pull it off the books because they're like, no, this doesn't need to happen. And then we told them, hey, even if you put a stop to the special exception use, it would still be required to get a special use permit. So let's just put everything on hold, because currently there hasn't been any special use permits acquired. Let's figure out where the holes are, let's plug them. Let's, add some standards, whether increase them, decrease them, water them down, whatever we need to do that makes sense for everybody. The city, MPC, stakeholders, businesses, neighbors, people who want to do the Airbnbs, and then move forward with something that works. Now, are you okay with them everywhere in the downtown? I know I've seen them on, a couple of the downtown apartments, and then even Wendy's on. Someone told me the Lighthouse was on Airbnb. I don't know the validity of that, but do y'all? What are your thoughts?
The fire tower is definitely on Airbnb.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, we like them downtown. It brings, anything that brings people downtown, and they're going to be walking around and spending money and going to Robinson Film Center and eating in restaurants and going to art shows. That's a win for us.
Right. And I guess then the question is, whether it be a special exception use, special use permit, that requires going in front of a board. What are y'all's thoughts on, like, well, wait a minute, no, you shouldn't have a public hearing. This should something be administrative that MPC staff can kind of look at, but also at the same time, dealing with neighbors' concerns. Sometimes a neighbor wants to go in and voice their opinion on something, so they want a public hearing. Thoughts on that?
Let me think about that for a while. I just don't think it has as much, there's as much problem in downtown as there might be in a neighborhood. I think that, having one or two Airbnbs next to a big office tower, I just don't think is going to create any problems. That may be more of a neighborhood issue than a downtown issue.
Yeah.
True. It's a good point.
At this point, I would almost wonder if there's a way to do that backwards, where if there's a problem, if a neighbor, if Liz's brother is consistently annoyed and the problem's not being solved, that he has a pathway to, reconcile that concern. But if, Miss Sarah's doing everything right, she doesn't need to take the afternoon off to come, meet with you guys. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Adam, am I able to be heard on this?
I can hear you, Mr. Lynn. Yes.
I can remember the one issue that we had with the house on Cross Lake where there were continual parties, and with the city of Shreveport and with the owner of the property themselves, we put an immediate stop to it. And so if any issue that anybody has with Airbnb, I think that it can be addressed on an individual, per case scenario. I've had 12 houses in Highland scattered all over, and over the last 30 years have had zero issue with any Airbnb. And if anything, they were an exemplary neighbor of mine. And it has been so many other people, absentee landlords, slumlords, people that are paying taxes on a house one time and then trying to sell it or rent it out to an unknowing person. There's just so many issues that if we could open up the door for more Airbnbs in Highland, if we could open up the door for light traffic business, B1 type business, to make it easier for people to do business in the neighborhood so that the city is able to recuperate property taxes. It's very unfortunate for the city. I just bought a house in Highland for $7,500. And that was because it's in such horrible shape, and I'm fixing it up. But anytime somebody buys property and fixes it up, that's what the Airbnb people are going to do, or people are going to show up, look at it, and turn around and walk out the door, and they're not going to get a return on their investment. And so as friendly as we could be to the Airbnb people to encourage them to sell property, I would love to be in the situation that New Orleans has been in. Of course, there's a lot of those people that are going bankrupt right now because they were leveraged, and nobody's going to New Orleans right now. But I don't see us having the same problems they have. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Miriam, do you have anything to add?
Not for today. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it is 1 minute shy of 4 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for being on the call and providing their input. We're going to continue to gather comments, concerns, questions. So whether it be myself or Miriam, I know y'all have Miriam's contact and most of you have mine. Feel free to reach out to us over the next couple of weeks as we continue to do our research and continue to look at other municipalities. We're going to take the notes that we gathered today, come up with a draft. Like I said, we're going to send it to all of you definitely, but we're going to make it public for everybody so that hopefully the second public forum will be as well attended, if not better, and we'll go from there. Does anyone want to conclude with anything?
Thank you for including me. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks so
Thank
much,
you,
Adam.
Adam.
Miriam.
Yep. Thanks,
you.
everybody. Y'all take care.
Thanks. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.